So, welcome back to part 5 of my series that looks at tourist accounts to Egypt and their larger social and political context. Part 4 ended with me finishing up the category of answers to questions like where did these travelers stay, what what were they advised to bring, things like that. So now I'm going to move on to my last category, which is what these travelers saw in Egypt. So the actual monuments that they saw, which explains the kind of glitch in part 4 because I had forgotten that this is where I put that last theme. So this title is not relating to a written work, but it's speaking to that general last category. So I'm going to put it in slideshow view here so that the screen can become full. And we are going to get started. So I started with one of the Muslim sources that you have seen before in this series, the Oriental Geography of Ibn Khaldun. So he lived in 900s CE, and the translation of his work that I got is from an English translation that was printed, I think, in London in 1800. The chief city of Egypt is called Fostat. So he is talking about modern day Cairo. Situated on the bank of the river Nile to the north. The Nile flows from the east, and all this city is situated on one side of it. Near to it are certain edifices called Gizera, or the island, to which they passed from Fostat on a bridge, and from this Gizera they have constructed a bridge to the other bank, where there is a place called Jihira. The extent of the city is about 2/3 of a farsang. It is very well inhabited and supplied with provisions. All their houses are 7 or 8 stories high. Near the town is a place called Mukaf, the soil of which is less marshy and more firm and solid. It is said that Fostat was the name of a certain tribe. From Aswan along the banks of the Nile as far as the sea, the country is all inhabited and cultivated. On the southern side of the Nile, there is a place called Said, where are mines and emeralds far in the desert. Beside these are not any mines of those precious stones. On the northern side of the river Nile, near near Fostat, there is a certain hill called Zem, in the vicinity of which is found the stone Ahin, and this hill extends to the land of the Iunians. And near that hill, in the district of Fostat, is a burying place, where the tomb of Shafi'i is situated. The Lord be merciful to him. Alexandria is a considerable town, built on the seaside. The houses and other edifices are of marble. And out in the sea there is a minaret or watchtower of hard stone and very lofty. It contains about 300 houses. No one without a guide can arrive there. And then this is one of the accounts from the 1600s that we've encountered before, this time by a Westerner, Sir Henry Blount, and it's in the first half of the 1600s. So one of the things that you'll notice in terms of prior to, let's say, 1750-ish, is that people, if they went to Egypt as tourists, the parts of Egypt that they had access to as tourists were Alexandria, the region or modern day Cairo, and the pyramid fields around it. So the modern day sites of Giza, Saqqara, and so on. So a lot of the accounts from the 1600s, roughly first half of the 1700s, those are the monuments and the tourist destinations that they talk about. Pocock and Norden were really some of the first major Westerners to go really far beyond that area, and in particular to get all the way up to modern day Luxor, ancient Thebes, at least in the West, and record what they saw there. So this is from Sir Blount and his party. So they were in Alexandria, and then they went on to Cairo, and so this is describing them going to see the site of Giza and the other pyramid fields that are around there, and the modern day site of Cairo encompasses where the ancient capital, or one of the ancient capitals of Egypt was, which is Memphis. Beyond this castle lies the plain sandy desert, which encompasses the east, north, and northwest of the city. From the castle to the Nile, some 3 miles through Old Cairo, extends an aqueduct far more stately and vast than either that of Constantinople or the other at Rome. The Nile runs along the south of the town to the west, making at its first arrival a dainty little island, where amongst many fine buildings stand the Nilescope, which is a little castle, wherein is set a pillar, with several notes declaring the inundation all over Egypt, according to each degree which the water reaches upon the pillar. Then they foresee the future years increase and rate provision accordingly. The day when the flood begins is constantly the summer solstice. The increase is usually between four score and 100 days. Then suddenly it abates, and by the end of November is within its narrowest banks, about a quarter of a mile broad. Cause of this admirable inundation I am not credulous enough to understand. 12 miles southwest of the city, so now he and his party are getting to the interior of the modern site of Giza. 12 miles southwest of the city, on the other side of the river, stand the 3 oldest and yet most entire pyramids. The largest I entered into down a descent some 30 paces, then creeping through a passage almost choked up with sand. We found a dark ascent through a passage between great marble stones, without stairs, only a little footing cut on each side. Here we passed, with every one a candle in one hand and a pistol in the other, for fear of rogues who often murder and rifle in those caverns. I found 2 large square chambers in the middle, the one empty, the other had in the midst a sepulchre, open and empty, about a yard and a half high, as much wide, and within not above 2 yards long. The stone seems a kind of red porphyry, but it is not, for it sounds better than a bell. It is fixed in the foundation, nor can ever be borne away, as too big for the passage. This being the ancientest monument in the world, encouraged me against the opinion of our decay in stature from our forefathers. The Jews pretend those 3 pyramids to have been built by Pharaoh, who drowned in the Red Sea, the little one for an only daughter of his, the greater for his wife, but the fairest intended for himself. Mist of his body lost in the sea. I suspected them to affect the glory and the renown of their enemy, for Herodotus much more authentic, fathers the chief upon Cheops, nor is there any brick whereof Pharaoh's buildings consisted. There are about 16 or 18 other pyramids extending southward, a matter of 12 or 14 miles. They are said to be of kings far less ancient than this. So I think here he's talking about the other pyramid fields. So, what are the modern sites of Saqqara, Abu Sir, and Abu Rash? Because Giza was the burial place for the royal family during a particular chunk of time in the Old Kingdom. And then later on, for reasons that are still not entirely clear, we have royal burial switching to the sites of, or going back and forth between Saqqara and Abu Roash. So I think those are the pyramids that he's talking about, because they did keep that pyramid shape as a royal tomb, for instance, in the 5th and 6th dynasty royal burials at Saqqara. And yet, though of the same stone, ruined extremely. The place so low as I was fain to creep, and I think if I remember correctly, at this point he's at what we call Saqqara, and he's either in one of the royal pyramids or in one of the mastaba tombs that were there, which are non-royal burials. The place so low as I was fain to creep, and all full of a dry sand, where moisture never comes, that preserves the bodies as much as the embalming, insomuch as I have seen some of the linen not touched by the embalming to remain perfect white, and found so many thousand years will things endure when untouched by moisture, the sole cause of putrefaction. The bodies lie, most of them in the sand, some in an open stone, within an hollow hewed therein. They are not beyond our ordinary proportions. In the pitch of the breast is seen a little idol, the head of human shape, with a prop under the chin. They are as big as one's middle finger, with hieroglyphics on the back, and made of stone, or rather baked mortar. Their being among the dead made me suppose them pieces religious, which with their old hieroglyphs in vain I searched to interpret. And then we have another account also from the 1600s. This is a new one. This is by a French gentleman, and I got it from the Internet Archive. So, like other travelers of his time, he comes into Alexandria first, and part of his account is describing the parts of the ancient city that are still standing and what he sees there. So, of the walls of Alexandria, the Pillar of Pompey, and other antiquities. I said before that Alexandria is so ruined that many strangers ask where it is when they are in the middle of it. Yet there are such fair remains to be found among the ruins, as easily show that this hath been a most rich and stately town. One of the finest things that are to be found there are the walls, which, though ruined, are still so magnificent that one needs confess they have been matchless. Nay, a good part of them are still entire, and they must needs have been built to last so long. Those walls have self-braze, I think that word is, and are flanked with great square towers, about 200 paces distant from one another. There is a little one betwixt every two of them. They are so neatly contrived that there are stately casemates underneath, which may serve for galleries and walks. I had a very earnest desire to go into one of these towers, that I might observe observe all the beauty of them. But as yet I durst not, for fear of an advany or fine. But being one day with another Frenchman in the old custom house, which is only an open place without any building, and finding a Turk there who seemed to be good natured, we prayed him to lead us into the towers of the old walls, near to that place, which he very willingly condescended to do. We went into two of the towers then, which are all alike. In each tower below there is a large square hall, the vault whereof is supported by great pillars of Thebic stone. There are a great many chambers above, and over all a large platform, about 20 paces square. In short, all these towers were so many palaces, able to contain 200 men apiece. The walls are several foot thick, and everywhere portholes in them. In every one of these towers there are several cisterns, so that each of them required an army to take them. All the ancient town was encompassed with these lovely walls, every way fortified by such towers, of which most part are ruined at present, though those we went into were pretty entire. There is a danger in going to see them, for the Turks, finding Franks there, take occasion to amerce them, saying they are spies or some such thing, and then nothing but money can bring them off, so that they pay dear enough for their curiosity. When I went thither, there was a Frenchman with me, who was so apprehensive of being surprised that he had not the least satisfaction, though he had lived several years in that country. But we had a little more confidence that we had a Turk with us. Next to the walls, the finest piece of antiquity that had withstood the ravages of time, in the pillar of Pompey, about 200 paces from the town. It is upon a little height, which makes it to be seen a great way off, and stands upon a square pedestal, about above 7 or 8 foot high. And that pedestal rests upon a square basis, about 20 feet broad, and about 2 feet high, made up of several big stones. The body of the pillar is of one entire piece of garnet, so high that the world cannot match it, for it is 18 cans high and thick, that it requires 6 men to fathom it round, having a lovely capital on the top. Some have said that this pillar consisted of 3 pieces, having heard Moors say who reckoned 3 pieces in it, to wit, the pedestal, the body, and the capital, as they themselves had told me. But the body is all one piece, as may plainly be seen. Since that time, and so now he's left Alexandria and he is in Memphis, or he's in Cairo, which is within the ancient area of Memphis. Since that time, the Turks have always been masters of it. This city stands ill, for it is at the foot of a hill on which the castle is built, so that the hill covers it and intercepts all the wind and air, which causes such a stifling heat there as engenders many diseases. Whereas if it stood in the place where old Cairo is, in the first place, they would have the benefit of the river, which is of great importance, were it only for water to drink. For the water must be brought into all parts of Cairo. So one of the things that you'll notice in a lot of these accounts, spelling is not standardized. So this is Cairo, but read Cairo. Because those who go to bring it on their camels, that they make the more returns, take it out of the burks or stinking poles that are near the river, and for all that sell it very dear. They would besides have the advantage of the wind, which blows on all hands along the river, so that the heat would not be so prejudicial. Nay, more, it would be a great help to trade, in that it would ease them of the labor and charges of loading their goods on camels, to carry them from the city to the port, or from the port to the city. And indeed, the ancients chose a very good situation for Memphis on the other side of the river. An old Caire hath since been built opposite to Memphis also, upon the river. But the later, who ought to correct the faults of the more ancient, if they are guilty of any, have committed the greatest errors, for I can see no reason why they have pitched upon that incommodious situation, unless it was, perhaps, to join the city to the castle, that so it might be under the protection thereof. Caire is a very great city, full of rabble. It lies in the form of a crescent, and that is where that particular passage ends. And now his party is going to the pyramids. Here, theretofore, there have been such powerful kings in Egypt, who have undertaken so great works, that it is not thought to be strange if, in sight of time itself, which devours all things, some pieces of them have remained till our days. Or rather, it is to be wondered that so little remains of so many magnificences, which heretofore made Egypt so renowned all over the world. But nothing has braved time so much as the pyramids that are to be seen nearer to Cairo. Doubtless they deserve very well to be seen, since they have merited a place among the wonders of the world. But there are some things to be taken notice of in this little progress from Cairo, and for simplicity's sake, I'm going to say Cairo, so I'm going to change the spelling here to our modern spelling, at least in the English. From Cairo to the pyramids, and if I mistake not, I have observed them here exactly enough. Having designed to go see the pyramids the evening before, I hired asses and Moors, that I might set out next morning betimes. The beasts are much used in Egypt, and carry one conveniently enough at an easy trot, and sometimes a good gallop too. There are of them to be hired in the corners of most of the quarters of Cairo, and are ready saddled, so that there needs no more but to get up. The Franks put little carpets over the saddles, made for the purpose, and stirrups for greater convenience, if you will. The more that lets the ass will follow to drive him on, and be careful to cry, "Take heed!" And I found it necessary for a Frank to take one with him, paying as much for the Moors as for the ass. However, nobody is obliged to take a Moor unless they please. Yet in this progress they are absolutely necessary for clearing the entry of the pyramids, as I shall say hereafter. I hired Moors and asses not only to ride on, but also to carry our provisions, for one must dine there. And seeing as I had a design to go from thence to see the mummies, i.e., he has in his mind to go see the general area of what we now call Saqqara, I provided for 2 or 3 days. There is nothing to be found in those parts but what men carry along with them, and I acquainted a janissary of the consuls to be ready with his musket to go along with me. Next day, taking our fowling pieces, i.e., their firearms, with us, both to shoot by the way and to defend us against the Arabs, we set out by break of day with our janissary, armed with sword and musket, and took our way by Old Cairo, about half a French league from Cairo, where, being come, we crossed the water over against the pyramids. On the other side of the water there is a village, and some more beyond it towards the pyramids, with several barks also, where there is always game. At length we came to the pyramids, which are 3 leagues from Cairo. The pyramids, which the Turks call Ferhan Dagori and the Arabs Dagobel Ferhan, that is to say, Pharaoh's Hills, are chiefly 3, which are seen from Cairo and a great way beyond it. There are others, as that of the mummies, and many more that are not considerable. One of these 3 pyramids is little in respect of the other 2, and is shut up. The other two are great, and many not without reason. Doubt which of the 2 is the bigger. However, the bigger is certainly that one which is open, which men mount and enter into. So I'm pretty sure that here he and the other travelers are talking about what is usually referred to as the Great Pyramid. The other is shut, and by consequence, one can neither enter nor go up it. They say that heretofore at the entry of that which is open, there was a great stone cut purposely to stop the mouth of it. When the body that was to lie there was put in, which stopped it so exactly that neither the place that was stopped nor the stone which stopped it could be known or distinguished, but that a bashaw caused that vast stone to be removed, that there might be a very exact way afterward for shutting up the earth, that there might be a very exact no way forward for shutting up the pyramid. When you come to that pyramid, you must lay aside what heavy things you have about you and prepare to mount up to the top, whilst your Moors are clearing the passage to go in. For the wind drives always a great deal of sand into it, which stops the passage to the bottom, and the Moors cast out that sand. Besides, if one should go in before he went up to the top, he would be so weary when he came out that he would never resolve to go up. And then it is best going up before the sun be high. It is fit you should have a guide to go before you when you ascend, I mean some Frank who hath been already there. For if you do not take the right way, you'll soon come to such places where you can neither go up nor down without danger of tumbling headlong. The easiest place to go up is at the angle that looks betwixt east and north. This pyramid has 280 great stone steps, the thickness of a stone, making a step of about 2.5 feet high with one another. For some of them are thicker and above 3 foot high, as I measured them. This number of steps has been observed by several, though some reckon fewer and others more. Nay, a man coming again a second time shall not find the same number that he had at first, if he begin not to ascend at the same place, because betwixt the corners towards the middle of the front, there is a little hill of sand driven there by the wind that covers several steps, which they that go up at that place reckon not. Besides that the trouble in going up makes one often miscount, for you must set your knees upon several steps because of their height, and then some reckon half steps for whole ones. Many think that these steps have only been made by the weather, but in all appearance that could not have worn them out so regularly, though without doubt it eats out a great deal, as may be seen by the pieces that lie all round below. This pyramid is 520 foot high, upon a base of 682 foot square. About halfway up, in one of the angles of the pyramid that looks betwixt east and north, which is the place by which I should advise one to go up. There is a little square room, but nothing to be seen therein. Only if you be weary, you may rest in it. And I am not against what several do, who bring with them a little bottle or gourd full of wine, to refresh themselves when they are got there or up to the top, for it makes one very faint. When you are come up to the top, you find a fair platform, from whence you have a pleasant prospect. This platform, which from below appears to you like a point, is made of 12 lovely large stones, between 16 foot and 2/3 square. There are some stones wanting, and it is to be believed that they have been pushed down by men, for the weather could not do it. Having considered these things, we came down the same way that we went up, and having taken a little rest, we came to the door of the pyramid, which is at the 16th step as you go up, looking towards the north. It is not exactly in the middle, there being 310 foot of the side below to the east of it, which being subtracted from 682, there remain 372 foot to the west side, so that this side surpasses the other by 62 foot. Cairo lies northward from it. Now come to this door, you must go up a little hill, join to the pyramid on that side, which, as I said before, hath, in my opinion, been made by the sand which the wind hath brought there, and so risen up to a heap, because it could go no further by reason of the pyramid. The lintel over this door is very considerable, being one stone, 11 foot long and 8 foot thick. Before any go in, they make the janissary fire 2 or 3 musket shot into it, to frighten away, as they say, the serpents that are there, but I never heard of any that had been found in it. In all probability, this path hath only been made to let down the bodies which were laid in the caves that are under the pyramid. When the Scottish gentleman was come up, I made a man hold a candle at the top of the second passage, and going down to the bottom near the straight turning, I looked up to the candle, which was a pretty pleasant object, appearing then no bigger than a little star. At length, when we were got out of this pyramid, we were made sensible of an error we had committed, for our janissary that had never been with us that had never been within before, entered with us, and by good luck going out again a little after with some of our company. They espied 6 Arabs on horseback making up to the pyramid, but he having presented his musket and our men their fowling pieces at them, they went back as they came. If they had come a moment sooner, they had taken all our provisions and stripped us stark naked as we came out. To prevent such a danger, the best way is to leave the janissary and some of the company without to keep guard. Having reflected a little on the danger which we had escaped, we viewed the second pyramid that is shut, and nothing of it to be seen but the outside, which is 631 foot square. The third is but little and not very considerable. In all probability, it hath been heretofore faced with stones like that of Pharaoh's tomb, which are tumbled down, as may be seen by many pieces lying about the said pyramid, some of them being very great. Pliny, speaking of these pyramids, says that that which was open was 20 years in building by 370,000 men, and that 1,800 talents were laid out during that time, only in turnips and onions, a thing not hard to be believed by those who have seen these wonderful structures, wherein there are such prodigiously great stones and raised so high that they must have had extraordinary engines for that purpose. And all men know that the ancient Egyptians were great eaters of onions, nay, and that the Jews longed for them in the wilderness. And at this hour they retain much of their forefathers' temper, for they are great lovers of turnips and pulse. Really, these pyramids are wonders worthy of the ancient kings of Egypt, who for magnificence in building exceeded all others of their time, and I believe without disparagement to any, that no prince in our world is able to raise such works, awful for the difficulty of piling up so many huge stones one over another, as for the tediousness of the labor. Many think it very strange whence they could have such large stones and in so great a quantity, seeing that country all about is nothing but sand. But they have not minded that under that sand there are rocks, out of which they had the stones, besides several neighboring mountains that abound in stone, though some say that they were brought from Syad upon the Nile. It is the opinion of many that the pyramids were heretofore higher above ground than they are at present, but that the sand hath covered a good part of their bases, and it is not unlikely, seeing the north side is covered up so to their door, and the other three sides are not, which makes men think that it blowing more violently from the north than from any other corner, the wind hath driven more sand on that side than other winds hath on the other sides. Before each of the three pyramids, the marks of certain square buildings are still to be seen, which seem to have been so many temples, and there is a hole at the end of the pretended temple of the second pyramid, by which some think there was a way down within the temple to go to the idol, which is a few steps distant from that hole. So I think what he's talking about here, these tombs, are probably these temples are probably knowing what I know of Egyptology, I think here he is talking about what Egyptologists have termed, I forget if it's the Valley Temple or the other type of temple, but basically what Egyptologists have figured out about the royal mortuary complexes at Giza is they had the pyramid where the actual burial was, and then they had a temple for each ruler that was adjacent to that pyramid, and then there was a causeway that was leading down to a second temple away from the cultivation area. The exact uses of those two temples and kind of exactly how they worked is something that's still being debated. Probably never ever going to be fully solved, but I think that's what he's talking about with those temples, because particularly the temples that were near to each pyramid as Cairo expanded in growth and industry, a lot of those sections were taken out or were lost in some way. And the idol that he's talking about is, of course, the Sphinx, which is a few steps different from that hole. The Arabs call this idol Abu el Hon, that is to say, father of the pillar, which Pliny calls Sphinx, saying that the people of the country believe King Amisus was buried in it. I am sure they believe no such thing at present, nor so much as know the name of Amisus, and indeed it is an erroneous belief. Others say that a king of Egypt caused this figure to be made in memory of a certain Rhodope, a Corinthian woman with whom he was much in love. It is said that the Sphinx, so soon as the sun was up, gave responses to anything it was consulted about, and hence it is all that who go into the pyramids fail not to say that a priest conveyed himself into that idol by the pit or well in the pyramids, which we just now described. But to show how groundless an opinion that is, we must know how the idol is made. It is the bust of a body, at some steps distance from the open pyramid, cut out of the natural rock, from which it hath never been separated, though it seemed to be of 5 stones pieced together, one upon another. But having very attentively considered it, we observed that which at first seemed to be seams or joinings of the stones are only veins in the rock. This bust represents the face and breast of a woman, but it is prodigiously high, being 26 foot in height, 15 foot from the ear to the chin, and yet all the proportions exactly observed. So now he and his party have seen Memphis, and they are heading to what Egyptologists now call the site of Saqqara. Having viewed the pyramids and idol, we went and lodged in the village of the mummies called Saqqara, 3 good leagues from the pyramids. We spoke to a Moor of the village, who is the master of the mummies, that he would take care to have a mummy pit open for us against next morning. He carried us to a house where we supped on what we had brought along with us, and then we went to rest upon a little rising in the court. When we were about to go out next morning, they asked money for watching us, as they said, all night, and it was no purpose for us to tell them that we wanted none of their watching, and that we had care enough to guard ourselves. For all our huffing was in vain, and there they shut us in till we gave a piastre to be let out. They who would not be so imposed upon ought to lie abroad in the fields, but that's not safe, for they are very greedy of money, and spare not to do anything so they may come by it. And as they fancy that the Franks always carry a good deal about them, when they have them in their clutches, they squeeze from them all they can. Wheretofore, when anyone goes there, he ought to be well accompanied, well armed, and have a good janissary. And with that, one must venture to beat them, for if he did, he would soon have all the rabble about his ears. We parted then from that village early in the morning with the master of the mummies, and went to the plain where the mummy pits are, a little way from the village, and I think it would be very convenient to set out 2 hours before day, to avoid the heat of the sun, for there is no shelter there. This plain begins near the place where the stately city of Memphis heretofore stood, of which some marks are still to be seen near the Nile. There are several pyramids in this plain, and that for several miles together, but not being very considerable. I shall only speak of a very fair one, which is 4 or 5 miles from the place where they opened a mummy pit for us. Whilst they were at work, i.e., opening a mummy pit, we went to see the pyramids I mentioned before, which would be nothing short of the beauty of the first, if it had been finished. We went up to the top before we entered it, as we did at the former. It has 148 steps of large stones like the other. The platform of it is not even, the stones being put together without order, which makes it easily appear that it hath not been finished, and yet it is much older than the other, as is evident by the stones, which are all worn out and crumbled into sand. It is 643 foot square, and hath its entry at the south at the fourth part of its height, looking towards the north as the former. It hath on the east side 316 foot, and by consequence sorry, I lost my place here for a minute. And by consequence, 307 to the west. And then I'm going to skip some of these measurements, which is something that you'll notice in a lot of the older accounts, as they like to try to give exact measurements for a lot of things. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here to when he's actually entering into this pyramid. There is a great room or hall at the end of this passage, with a ridged roof, containing in length 20 or 26 foot 8 inches, and in breadth 24 foot and 1 inch. The floor of it is in the natural rock, which on all sides is rough and unequal, leaving only a little smooth and even space in the middle, encompassed round with the rock, and much lower than the entry into the room or the foundation of the wall. When we had viewed this pyramid, we returned to the mummies and found them digging our pit. But they cheated us, as they do many others, opening a pit that had been 20 times opened before, though they swore it was the first time. Now this advantage is to be had by going down into a pit never opened before, that one may find idols and other curiosities there. But when these rascals find anything, they keep it, that they may sell it in the city to the Franks, and therefore never open a new pit, but when they are alone. These pits are square, and so here I'm pretty sure he is talking about the mastaba tombs. which are the main tomb type for non-royal burials in the Old Kingdom. These pits are square and built of a pretty good stone, but are full of sand, which must be taken out. When they had removed the sand, they let us down by a rope fast about our middle, which was held by those that were above. And the pit was 2 or 3 pikes' length deep, being at the bottom. We crept through a little hole upon our belly, because they had not cleared it sufficiently of the sand, and entered into a little room, walled and arched over with stone. There we found 3 or 4 bodies, but only one that was entire, the rest being broken into pieces, which easily convinced us that the pit had been opened before. We were then for having that opened, which was entire, but they would not, unless they were paid for it. And therefore I gave them a piastre, which did not content them. But when they perceived that I was about to break it up in sight of them, without giving them one farthing more, they beat it into pieces. This was a long and large body in a very thick coffin of wood, shut close on all hands. The timber was not at all rotten, and we found it to be sycamore wood, which in Egypt they call Pharaoh's fig tree, that does not rot so soon as other wood. Upon the coffin, the face of him that was within it was cut in embossed work. Some coffins there are also of stone, with the face of the person within cut in embossed, and hieroglyphics all along the length of it. There are 2 of these stones in the house of Senior Fouquet as St. Mondi, and I had 2 of them also, of which one was broken at Alexandria, and the other I brought home with me very whole, which weighs betwixt 700 and 800 weight. Some of the coffins are made of several pieces of cloth pasted together, which are as strong as the wooden ones. I have one of this kind in my closet, made of above 40 cloths glued or pasted together in thickness, which are not in the least rotten. It is covered all over with idols and hieroglyphics, painted on very thin plaster, with which the outside cloth is daubed over, but it is a little spoiled, the plaster in some places being rubbed off. And here, when he's talking about his closet, he's not necessarily talking about a closet that we would put clothes in, but something that is called that was called a closet of curiosities, which in a lot of the 17th, early 18th century and before was basically a room to put this kind of objects into, objects that were considered to be old or somewhat strange and marvelous. So it was in essence an early display room. And now we have Norden. So again, I've just put the first part of the title here. So Frederick Norden was in Egypt in the second half of the 1700s. So it was either the 1740s, 50s, or 1760s. And he got his funding to go all the way up to Thebes from the King of Denmark. And I think that part of that funding also came through for his account that he published later on that I'm reading from now. So this is an example of, I got my particular copy from Abe Books. At least I'm pretty sure it was Abe Books and not Thrift. And the particular publisher series that I got it on is 18th century online print editions. But if you search the Internet Archive or maybe even the Library of Congress, there's a good chance, or at least there's not a 0% chance, that they will have a copy of Norden's Travels in PDF that you can download as well. So this is typed from the print copy that I got from a books. What I've also done is I have put into modern spelling some of these words. So if you're looking at this slide and then you decide to get Norden's account for yourself, you'll notice that the spelling is different because I've kind of fixed up the spelling here. So this is from essentially the dedication page, and it speaks to that entanglement of royal and imperial patronage networks. So to the king, a work undertaken by the orders of an illustrious king for the advancement of learning and knowledge, and published under the direction of a Royal Society of Sciences, that owes its birth to the glorious pattern which was given to the rest of Europe by one of your Majesty's predecessors in the throne, lays a kind of claim to your royal protection, under which the arts and sciences have been so much advanced that our Royal Society, and I put that in italics because I think it was in italics in the original manuscript, which set the example to all others, still remains unequaled by any. And this is from one of the letters that Norden sent, talking about part of Thebes that he saw, because the print copy that I got had those letters in it as well. I have met with, I meaning Norden, with many particulars that Strabo speaks of, and among the rest, the two grand colossus mentioned in his writings. So the Colossi of Memnon, as their modern name is. And then I skipped ahead a bit, so that's what the ... is. The palace of Memnon is entire and ornamented with significative hieroglyphs of great beauty. So this is a case where this is the original word, and it's no longer a word that's in our vocabulary, but because that is the word that was in the text, that's one spelling that I did keep and did not change. Hieroglyphs of great beauty, where the uncrustated colors, same thing for uncrustated, are as well perceived as if they had been applied but yesterday. And this is the original manuscript page that I found it from. And the same thing there. And now Norden is talking about some rules of conduct that Westerners should observe if they are in Egypt. And I picked this quote in particular because it kind of speaks to the larger distribution of power at that time, and kind of who held political authority, which by the 19th century was not the case. So in Norden's time, one of the things that travelers should observe is that there was apparently one rule, and then I've skipped ahead: never to dig at the foot of any piece of antiquity, nor to break any stone of any monument whatsoever. You must be content with seeing what is exposed to the sight, and those places where you can clamber up, or to which you can get by creeping. So now Norden, like travelers before him, came into Alexandria first, and then he went on to Cairo later on. So this is that part of his journey. The pyramids, i.e. the pyramids of Giza, are not situated in plains, but upon the rock. That is, at the foot of the high mountains, which accompany the Nile in its course, and which make the separation betwixt Egypt and Libya. The principal pyramids are at the southeast of Giza, a village situated on the western shore of the Nile, as I have already observed. There are 4 of them that deserve the greatest the attention of the curious, for though we see 7 or 8 others in the neighborhood, they are nothing in comparison of the former, especially since they have been opened and almost entirely ruined. And then Norden, like other travelers of his time, to get to Giza, nowadays there is a modern road that just goes straight from Cairo to Giza, and I forget on which side, but it's basically on one of the sides of Giza Plateau. Modern Cairo has expanded so much that literally, like right up to the edge of the pyramids. But in the 1600s, 1700s, 1500s, and I forget the exact date that this stopped happening, but at least for part of the 19th century, to get to the pyramids, you have to cross the Nile River, which now Norden. One of the accounts from the 1600s talked about. So this is what Norden is referencing here. To get to one of them, it is 3 hours voyage from Old Cairo. To go thither when the Nile is low, you take water near the island of Rhoda and get yourself conveyed to Giza. So again, I kept that original spelling, but by Giza he means Giza, by means of a bark, so a type of boat. The distance from thence is no more than a musket shot, and this you travel by land. But when the waters have swollen to their highest pitch, i.e., when it's the time of the inundation, you may go by water from Old Cairo quite to the rock on which the pyramids were built. And these are just some maps. This first one is from 1529, so a little bit before Norden's time. This is one from around 1620, but this one in particular gives you a good visual of what these travelers are talking about in terms of the part of the Nile that they had to actually cross to get to the pyramids of Giza, which are represented up here. So this is Cairo in this case, as it was in 1529, or around there. And then this is the bridge that is over the Nile that they have to cross to, or this is the bridge that's over a tributary of the Nile or over a canal, and then they still have to cross the main Nile, and then they have to go a little bit more by land to reach the pyramids. So to just to kind of give you a visual of what some of those accounts were saying. And I think I'm seeing, it's not as clear in the map from the 1600s. It more focuses on Cairo. It does tell you that this is where the main Nile River is, and this is one of the tributaries here, but where the pyramids are, they don't make as clear unless it's this chunk here, which actually, yeah, it probably is. So this is Giza here. So it's that same basic thing where you have Cairo and then you have to cross basically a canal or tributary, and then you still have to get across the Nile and then kind of do that little bit of land to the Mokattam Plateau, which is the name of basically the geological rock formation that the pyramids were on, or the pyramids of Giza are on. So one of the other major 1700s travelers to Egypt was Richard Pocock. He and Norden were roughly contemporaries of each other, so for at least some point in both of their lives, they were alive at the same time. I forget which one died first, and they also went to Egypt at roughly the same time. And they both had the stated goal of getting as far as Thebes and recording and writing down all that they saw. So this is another case where the manuscript copy that I'm working from, I'm working from an actual book because I got Pocock's volume 1 from Abe Books. But if you go on Internet Archive or tootle around on the net in different scholarly databases, again, there's not a 0% chance that a copy of Pocock's has been scanned and can be downloaded as a PDF. So I think I'm going to stop there. And when I return with part 6, we are going to hear through Pocock's words about the state that some of these monuments were in.